You may have forsworn your oath, but your oath hasn't forsworn you.
Hi there, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Watched by Ashley, where we take a look at some of the new releases on the big streaming platforms and video on demand and discuss whether or not they're worth the watch. Today I'm really excited to discuss a film that I know that a lot of Dungeons and Dragons fans have eagerly been anticipating, and that of course is Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. So I'll be completely honest, I didn't think that this movie would have anything for me, as I didn't play the tabletop game, and I'm not really a fan of those kind of party quest video games.
I'm Holga Kilgore. This is Simon, Edgin, and Doric back there.
But I was honestly pleasantly surprised. This film actually is really fun, and for an hour and 34 minutes I was just entertained. And really and truly, that's all you could ask for in a film. So in my opinion, this film definitely delivered. If you are a Dungeons & Dragons fan, I think that this movie will definitely be very nostalgic for you. I think it checks off all the boxes. It does a really nice job kind of introducing the world here. I saw the film with someone who is a fan, and you know, this is definitely an improvement over the early 2000s film release. You know, it was a shame back then because the film fell into the tropes of being a disaster when it comes to game adaptations of film. But here they definitely corrected the course, and this is a huge improvement. I have to give credit to the directors and screenwriters of this film. So that of course is Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley. And I think they did a really great job. I love it when people are very passionate about their projects and they put their love from their childhood into what they're producing. And what I mean by that is, if you take into example The Mandalorian and Jon Favreau, like, he clearly loves the lore and he brought us The Mandalorian. You could see the love and passion with that. And I think that's the same idea here with these two creative minds, because they really, obviously they brought the different types of classes of characters, the story, the spells, put these little things here. And I think it just goes to show you, when you have someone who loves the IP and is very knowledgeable and it means something to them, they produce something special. I wish that more executives in these high positions realize that, especially when it comes to comic book movies. Like, She-Hulk is the opposite of that. Like, they put people who don't read comics or people who don't care about the actual IP in charge of something, and it sucked. But when you put someone in charge who cares about it, it can be very beautiful and it can actually touch people. So I think for a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons fans, they'll be happy. I think that they did justice with what they could, because there is a balance you have to strike, because you need an audience of people who don't know the world to want to watch the movie. So they did a good job in that sense. Another thing working for this movie, aside from the great direction and the story, is definitely the cast.
I should start by giving you some context. You may be surprised to learn I wasn't always a thief.
Chris Pine has proved that over the years he can do anything effortlessly. He could be the heartthrob, he can be the action star, he could be the comedian, and also the dad looking for redemption. So here he kind of does everything, and he does it really well. So I really enjoyed his performance as the bard Edgin. So he of course is kind of in the class of being a harper, which is like a spy. So very skilled, very cunning. He ends up meeting Helga, played by Michelle Rodriguez, who is a barbarian of the barbarian class. And even though she has a tough exterior, she really does love Edgin's daughter.
I know you don't like hugs, but I need one. Yes.
From the rogue class, you have Forge, who's played by Hugh Grant, and he's a very dubious character. Lately, Hugh Grant's been playing these dastardly fellows, but he is clearly enjoying it, and his performance is definitely enjoyable as well. Adding to the class in the mixes here, we have Regé-Jean Page playing the paladin kind of role here, and I was so entertained with his performance. Like, even though he's of course the handsome gentleman from Bridgerton that took the world by storm a couple years ago, he was really funny in this role, and he has really amazing chemistry with Chris Pine. They have really great banter. I love that. That was one of the highlights of the movie for me.
Keep this. You may not yet believe your words, but I do.
Yeah, good for you.
Simon, hold on to this.
And it's not because he's handsome, it was just that his character is just so rigid, and having Chris Pine bounce off of him, it was really great.
I find irony is a blade that cuts he who wields it most especially.
Yeah? Is that what you find?
You have Justice Smith, who is playing kind of like a sorcerer or mage who's half elf, so very interesting combination for that. And then you have Sophia Lillis, who's playing Doric, who's like a druid and she shapeshifts, so she's of that class. So they keep the classes here. It doesn't really feel like you have a party and you're on a quest, so I like that aspect of it because it definitely plays homage to its roots. From beginning to end, I would say this movie accomplished more than a lot of the Marvel movies do these days. Like, it takes like 3 movies for a Marvel film to really develop the character, introduce the villain, give us the villain's motives, and then do the showdown. But here they did it all in one movie and it felt like the same amount of emotional impact. But that's just my opinion. I think that the Marvel movies have been really watered down lately, but this movie I thought was very concentrated for what it wanted to accomplish, so I like that aspect of it. I really appreciated the comedic parts of this movie.
In other words, Forge is a real son of a bitch.
So you blame his mother for his corruption?
What? No, it's an expression.
I see. I do not traffic in colloquialisms.
So of course these are all characters and classes in the game, so if you're familiar with the game, you're definitely going to be very happy to see in the way that they depicted them here. If you're like me and you're not really familiar with this world, it is still very entertaining and you don't need to have that background to enjoy the movie, which was really great. The story is fairly straightforward. Like, of course, like I mentioned, Edgar ends up losing his wife, and as he's trying to correct that wrong, he ends up becoming a thief and he finds out that there's a relic that can actually bring his wife back to life. So with his party that he has, he ends up trying to steal the relic but gets caught, so he has to go to prison with Helga. And years pass by, and unfortunately everyone thinks that he just abandoned his daughter for the wrong reasons. And the person to adopt his daughter, of course, is Forge, and that's like the worst thing that could possibly happen. And so we end up in this redemption story where he gets out of prison and he's trying to work his way back to his daughter. And for the hour and 34 minutes, it was very entertaining. I really did feel like I was on a quest with these characters and we had a clear objective. There are parts where it's very comedic. There's a lot of fun in this movie, so it is a really great time. For only being an hour and 34 minutes, the world building that they accomplished was pretty impressive because, like I said, you do end up getting emotionally attached to these characters because they all have a chip on their shoulder. They all have something that they need to resolve, except for the Paladin. He's just perfect the way he is. But everyone has a bit of something that you can like in them, and so you do get emotionally invested. In terms of the villain, we saw them throughout the film. We saw what their motives were. It was really refreshing to see it kind of wrap up at the end of the movie. I love the fact that it was just entertaining. There wasn't any message or any lecturing in this movie. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that like wins lots of points with me because I feel like when you go into a theater, you're going there to be distracted and entertained and not have the craziness of the outside world come in here. And they did a really good job balancing that. Like, yes, Michelle Rodriguez's character as the barbarian, she is physically stronger than the average male and she is a skilled warrior. She's just a very strong person taking up that space and I really appreciated that. Even with Doric, like she's a very badass shapeshifter and very powerful, but they don't do it in a way that makes men look weak. Yes, the men are kind of bumbling a little bit, but at the same time, they're needed in this movie. Like, Justice Smith's character, the mage Simon, like, yes, he's finding his place in the group and as a mage himself, but he's very crucial to their final plan. Like, he ends up having a big role. He doesn't just shrink. He actually ends up binding himself, and I like that. Chris Pine's character, Edgin, like, he made some mistakes, and he was a bad dad, but we could see that his intentions were always pure, and he wanted to be the kind of man that his daughter would be proud of. And of course, Regé-Jean Page's character as the Paladin Xandric Yandar, he was just a very competent man. And I appreciated that because it didn't really castrate him in the way that Marvel did with Thor and Thor Love and Thunder. So it's very refreshing. I like that fact. I think that if more movies, as I say, kind of just focus the storytelling and not lecturing, they'll be more successful. I'm really hoping that when this movie finishes its theatrical run, it will have a higher profit. Right now it's sitting about $170 million, which isn't too bad, but when you have such a high budget, you really do need to make that performance. But I think what it suffers from is the fact that a lot of moviegoers are so used to video game adaptations being horrible, so they don't really know what to expect. But 2023 has really been the resurgence of adaptations in film because we've had some really good releases. So The Last of Us was a fantastic adaptation for a video game to television. The Super Mario film has done fantastically well. I mean, they're looking at getting over $1 billion, which no one expected. I think the fatigue from the superhero films is allowing this medium of video game adaptations to really thrive, and especially because there's a lot of nostalgia behind some of the releases here. So like, of course, Sonic and Mario, kids from the 80s are going to love and want to see with their kids, and so there is that market to tap into. And I think because these have like roots in like just good old-fashioned family fun, that you don't have a lot of those subverted messages here. And if they continue with that, I think they'll be successful. It's just when you get too bogged down with politics, it ruins the films. So if I was to give the movie a rating, I think it is an 8 out of 10. It's really enjoyable. It's funny. It has a good story. It's well produced. The budget's pretty good. The choreography for Michelle Rodriguez's scenes, I think, were a little bit off. It's kind of hard to follow at some points, but that's nitpicking, to be honest with you. It is just high quality and good production for majority of it. So yes, I would definitely recommend this film. I think if it comes on streaming and you haven't watched it, you should definitely give it a shot. I think it's an enjoyable theater experience, so if you have the opportunity to do that as well, I do recommend it. I think movies are a lot better in theaters. One other thing about John Francis Daley that I want to point out is he's also an actor, and I mean, he's been a part of like a lot of big franchises, like he helped write Homecoming, the Spider-Man movie. But what I wanted to point out is he actually played Mitch in the movie Waiting. And that's one of my favorite movies because it's just so funny. Like, it takes place in a restaurant and Mitch is like a new recruit and he has like the worst first day at a job ever. So whenever I'm having a lousy day, I put that movie on and I just vibe out with Mitch. But I think it's just so fun to see that he went from acting to being behind the camera, and this has been like his career progression for him. I mean, he still acts too, but behind the scenes, he's done really great work behind the camera, so that's pretty awesome. But those are my thoughts in regards to Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen the film or if you enjoyed it. If you played the game, do you think this was a good adaptation? Did you like feel like they did it justice? But that's all I have for you today, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content here but haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. But until next time, take care. Bye.
Should the way become too dim, you may take my hand, and I will lead you.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not taking his hand.